And we are on Daf Kof Yod Aleph. We are going to, Be'ezrat Hashem, finish the 14th Perek this evening and start the next Perek. Topics are going to be some more items about medication on Shabbat, a lot about vinegar and some oil and wine for stomach, and then the next Perek is going to be about tying knots. So we'll see that also be some interesting material. Okay, we start with the Mishnah that says, "Hachoshesh b'shinav lo yigma bahen et hachomes." Someone who has some pain in his teeth should not sip vinegar. Vinegar does, in fact, have antibacterial qualities, kills viruses too. So that's what they would use if they had an infection. And because it is effective as medicine, it's not permitted on Shabbat. And as we said, medication in general is not permitted on Shabbat. But we don't want the person to be in pain, so we do have a workaround. He can dip food in it in vinegar, as you usually do. Salad in it, whatever, and that way, if the vinegar goes into the tooth and it gets better, then it gets better. But that's a permissible way to do it. If someone's stomach is hurting, lower intestines, then he should not put wine and vinegar mixture and rub it on. But he can put oil on, because no one puts wine and vinegar on their skin. I mean, that's not normal. You'd only be doing that for medication. But oil, people normally put oil on their skin. And so now he's doing it for medication, but something that someone would do otherwise. So that's okay. As long as it's not oil from roses. Because a regular person can't use rose oil because that's very expensive, and a regular person would not use rose oil for rubbing. But a prince would, because for them that's they wouldn't only use it for drinking, but also so that way, since it's normal for them to do it all week long, they can use that for medication also, because it's not obvious that they're necessarily using it for medication. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kol Yisrael b'nei melachim hem. Rabbi Shimon has a beautiful statement. We don't have class structure, rich and poor. No, once if some people use it, then it is a normal way to do it, and everybody's considered princes. So therefore, anyone can use rose oil therapeutically on Shabbat, because it's considered high line, and everybody should be considered high line too. All right, that's the Mishnah. The Gemara is going to find a contradiction from a baraita. Generally, there's going to be short discussions from the Gemara, often involving other baraitot that are similar. Ravacha, he was very tall, so he was known as the tall Ravacha, but his actual name was Bar Papa. And he had a question to Rabbi Abahu from this Mishnah, comparing it else. Tanan hachoshesh b'shinav lo yigma bahen et hachomes. Lememra de chomes ma'ali de shinaim. Okay, so we learn in the Mishnah that you cannot use vinegar on Shabbat as a medicine. So that means that it is good for your teeth. It will make them feel better. V'haketiv kachomes l'shinaim v'che'ashan la'ainayim. Pasuk in Mishle says, like vinegar is to teeth and like smoke is to eyes. That's what it is like sending a lazy person on a mission, right? There's just not going to guess. It's a bad idea. So you see from this Mishnah that says vinegar is bad for the teeth, because that would be parallel to the other ones, as smoke is to the eyes. This is interesting, Odaminu, because usually Odaminu is two things from the same status, two Pesukim that are against each other. Odaminu literally means to lift up, where we're presenting, we're one against the other. Or it's two Tanaitic statements, a Mishnah and a Baraita, or two Baraitot. In this case, it's a Mishnah and a Pasuk. Okay, so I think that's a little bit unusual, but still it's a contradiction. And I mean, normally we'd go with a Pasuk, but maybe it's not from the Torah, it's from Mishle. Anyway, it's really more of a realistic question of, is vinegar good for teeth or not? Oh, we're talking about different types of vinegar. The first one, the Pasuk is talking about fruit vinegar. that is harmful for the teeth. But wine vinegar, challah, that is okay. That's good. That's therapeutic. Wine vinegar is good. That's what the Mishnah is talking about. Another possible answer. Both are talking about regular wine vinegar. Hadika makah, hadaleka makah. Depends if you're well or not. If someone is well, then he should not have vinegar, because vinegar will make his teeth set on edge and it will wear down the gums. Not good. But rather, okay, sorry. But the Mishnah is talking about where someone does have a wound, and if you have a wound, if you have an infection, then vinegar will bring it down, will kill the bacteria. So therefore, it is good if you have an infection. And the pasuk is talking about when you don't have an infection. Okay. If you have an infection, then it's good. If you don't have one, then it'll weaken the teeth. Good. Next section of the Mishnah says, Lo yigama bahen et hachomes. You can't sip vinegar through the teeth. B'hatanya lo yigama upolet aval megameya ubole. We have a baraita seems to be more lenient than the Mishnah. Mishnah says you can't sip at all, but this baraita says you cannot sip and spit out, because that's clear. You're not ingesting it. You're not eating it. You only want to spit it out. But if you sip it through your teeth and swallow it, well, then you're eating it. So then you got some benefit. So that's fine. So now we have a contradiction. The Mishnah is more stringent, but Aita is more lenient. Amar Abaye kitenaname matnitin megameh upoletenan. Abaye says, actually, well, I'm going to understand it not as a contradiction, but the Baraita can be understood as a kind of commentary explaining the Mishnah. And then the Mishnah also, when it said you're not allowed to do that, it's talking about when you are taking in the vinegar and spitting it out. But if in fact you're swallowing it, that's fine, because then you're eating it. So that's a pretty simple, nice solution. Taking the Baraita. This leads to a more general question: does the Mishnah usually or always tell us all the information we need, or is it written in really shorthand, and the Baraita and other statements can come and fill in the details, even though they're very important details you need to know. So that's what Abaye would say. Rava amar afilu tema megamea uboleya. I can even say that the Mishnah is talking about when you swallow it. Even swallowing it is not permitted. Kan lifnei tibul, kan lachar tibul, and depends if it's before the dipping, before they bring out the celery and the lettuce for dipping, and you're tasting the vinegar. You want to see if it's a good mix. So that's fine, because you would normally taste it beforehand, and so that's what the Baraita was talking about when it said it's allowed. And Mishnah, when it says it's not allowed, that's talking about a case of after tibul, after they finish the salad section. You know, our Passover Seder is made in the same order as a regular Roman formal meal, and so if they already took away the vegetables, and you're still sipping the vinegar, that's weird, right? You would only do that because if it's a medication, and that's why it's not allowed. Okay, now v'nema medilifnei tibul shareh v'achar tibul name shareh. Well, hold on. This is Rava that just said that, and why don't we say a since? Right? This is called ho'il. This is a special rule. Why don't we say, since it's permitted to sip the vinegar and swallow it before the meal, so too it should also be allowed after the meal. In other words, we bring it in as a package. Because because Rava, who said this distinction between the Mishnah and the Baraita, he in general has a principle of ho'il that he upholds. Now, how does this principle work? Let's compare it to another case. The other case is regarding going into a mikveh on Shabbat. Are you allowed to go to a mikveh on Shabbat? So, in general, a person can bathe, and not heated water, but just bathe on Shabbat. Can they go into the mikveh? Well, technically, it could be a problem because you're fixing something. Right? Person was tameh, and now he's becoming tahor. But since on Shabbat you're just bathing, you say, I'm just bathing, I'm not going to the mikveh. I want to go dip in the ocean. So we say it's okay. Now everybody agrees with that. The thing that Rava adds is that even on Yom Kippur, on Yom Kippur you're not allowed to bathe, you can still say ho'il, this principle. Since it's permitted on Shabbat, it's also permitted on Yom Kippur, which is a very interesting thing, because we all know that you can't bathe on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. Even for a mikveh, we wouldn't do it. But according to Rava, it is allowed because since it's allowed on Shabbat, even though reason on Shabbat you're allowed to bathe, on Yom Kippur you're not. But since we apply one to the other. So since he has this principle of application, ho'il, why not say the same thing over here, that since it's allowed before the vegetables, so it should also be allowed after the vegetables. And then we would have a problem because we would have a contradiction between the Mishnah and the Braita. Here's what Rava said that. There is nothing that is allowed on Shabbat that's not allowed on Yom Kippur. Of course, eating, but he's talking about melacha. Right? Anything that's allowed on Shabbat, including going to mikveh, is also allowed on Yom Kippur. Ho'il, the b'Shabbat shareh, Yom Kippurim nameh shareh, as we has this principle of ho'il. So since that's Rava, why didn't he say the same thing? Okay, so that's a good question to Rava, and our answer is Hadar be Rava me'ahach. Rava changed his mind regarding this matter, and no longer does he say that sipping vinegar is beforehand is allowed. And so since he doesn't say beforehand it's allowed, he is not going to say that afterward is allowed either. He retracted that entire statement. I mean, it really would have been a problem. Okay. How do you know he retracted this? Maybe he retracted the other thing he said about Yom Kippur. No, we don't think that, because there is a Braita that says anyone who must go to the mikveh is allowed to go to the mikveh on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. And so you see that Rava has a Braita to back him up, and so he's not going to argue with the Braita. He's not going to change his mind against it, and so he sticks with that principle of Ho'il, but he doesn't answer the Mishnah Braita that way. So we have to go back to Abaye, who said the Braita is really just explaining the Mishnah. All right, good. Now we have the next part of the Mishnah. It says Achoshesh b'motnav. If you're worried about if you have a pain in your intestines, then you cannot put oil and wine. I mean vinegar and wine, but you can put oil. Amar Rabbi Abba Zavda Marav Halacha Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said you can use rose oil. Not only a prince can use rose oil, anyone can use rose oil because we consider everyone like princes. Rav, the first generation Amora, says, I agree with Rabbi Shimon, that's permitted. Okay, now we know Rabbi Shimon in general is permissive regarding Ochot Shabbat in many different areas. So now we say, wait a second, can we derive from this that Rav said halacha is like Rabbi Shimon here, that he also agrees with him in other cases? Does he hold him like him in general? I mean, it would theoretically be possible to say he agrees only here and not in other cases. But it seems to be a package deal. If you agree with Rabbi Shimon regarding davar she'eino mitkaven, if I do something without intention for that item, but rather something else, Rabbi Shimon says that's allowed. And so it seems that if you follow this kula, this lenient opinion of Rabbi Shimon, you should follow him everywhere. And does Rav do that? Rav Simi bar Chaya mishmed Rav hay masoch rayana benaz yata asur lahadoke biyomata. Okay, this time if I have a barrel and a spigot, I want to stop up the hole, and I use a piece of cloth. So I take the cloth, I'm gonna shove it into that hole, and while I'm doing that, inevitably I'm going to wring out some of the water or wine, whatever is in there, is going to be I'm going to wring it out, and that's not allowed on Shabbat. And so therefore, you see that Rav here says I am not allowed to put in that stopper on Yom Tov, Yom HaTaba. Okay, and if he followed Rabbi Shimon would allow it, because in this case, my intention is not to wring out the rag, but rather to stop up the hole. If, by the way, it happens to be that it gets wrung out, wasn't my intention, even though it's going to happen for sure. So Rav, you see here, is machmir. and Rabbi Shimon would be Mekel. So now we have a question: how come Rav is Mahmir here? But in our Mishnah, he said he follows Rabbi Shimon. In our Mishnah, to say that use rose oil. So is he going to be lenient in Hilchot Shabbat or not? Okay, Vahi afilu Rabbi Shimon modeh. Regarding stopping up the opening of the barrel with a cloth, even Rabbi Shimon would agree that's not allowed. It's definitely going to happen, even though that was not my intention. So davar she'eno mitkaven, but pesik rashe, that's like if you cut off a head of a chicken, for sure it's going to die. Even though that's not your intention, you just wanted to get a toy for your kid. It's not, even the Rabbi Shimon would agree that that's not allowed. So therefore, you see, it's not a contradiction. Rav can follow Rabbi Shimon in this case too. Okay. So far, now we have a bigger problem because we have a statement and the name of Rav who says the law is like Rabbi Yehuda explicitly. Rabbi Yehuda who argues on with Rav on all these cases, he says davar she'eno mitkaven is hayav. Rav Hanan bar Shimei amar Shemuel halacha keRabbi Shimon. It was Shemuel that said halacha is Rabbi Shimon, not Rav. Right, another sage learned the same tradition, machloka between Rav and Shemuel, but without the attributions going up to their name, just them themselves. Rav amar halacha keRabbi Yehuda, Shemuel amar halacha keRabbi Shimon. I think it's interesting that we have two different traditions about how to remember this. That Rav says halacha is Yehuda and Shemuel. Some with the intervening names, generations, some just the original. Right? You have to. Can you just quote if someone tells you a nice quote from Einstein, do you have to say, I heard from my friend, who heard from his friend, who heard from his teacher, who heard from Albert Einstein? Or can I just go look it up myself, right? Okay, so, but they were very careful to remember it the way that it was taught to them. And anyway, the point here is that Rav says, halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, who's machmir in Hilchot Shabbat and davar she'mitkaven, not like Rabbi Shimon. So how come over here in our Mishnah, he says anyone can use rose water, which is like Rabbi Shimon, and he's mekel. Elama Rava, ani v'arisha b'chabura tergemina, umanu Rabbi Chia bar Abin. It is all we explained that me and the lion in the group, they had a group of students that were together, and the other a person who was very strong and very sharp. We figured it out. This as follows: Halacha Rabbi Shimon v'lav mita'ameh. We agree with Rabbi Shimon in this case. We agree with the end result, but not for the same reason that he gave. We agree with it for a different reason. So therefore, in general, we think we should be machmir like Rabbi Yehuda. In this case, it happens to be that we agree with his conclusion. Right? This is like sometimes Supreme Court, different justices, they agree on the conclusion, but they write different opinions anyway because they have different reasons for getting there. Okay, what is the different opinion? A different reason. Perhaps it's that he agrees that it's allowed to use, anyone's allowed to use rose oil, but not for the same reason. Rabbi Shimon thinks it does heal. He has healing properties for your intestines, but it's allowed. And Rav says it's not healing. There's no medicinal value. Since it's not it's not effective as medicine, therefore it's allowed on Shabbat, right? Because you're only not allowed to do something that is effective as medication. If it's just nonsense, and someone else happens to think wrongly that it's medication, and you can have it. And that's why Rav says permitted. If you think that, but that would go against the Mishnah explicitly. The Mishnah says that princes use this to get better. So the Mishnah thinks that it does in fact work. So he's not going to argue with that. So this is what he meant when he said that. Rabbi Shimon said, since princes use it, even though it's hard to find otherwise, since it is found and some people use rose oil, so therefore it's allowed for everybody. And Rav says, no, only in a place for people where there's a lot of rose oil and people generally would use it for medication is fine, otherwise not. And the place where he lived, there was a lot of rose oil. So everybody was, in fact, like princes. Everybody was using it. And that's why in Rav's own place, he permitted it. But he doesn't actually agree with Rabbi Shimon's reason, which is that if some people use it, everyone can use it. He doesn't agree with that general principle that says all Bnei Israel are like princes. Okay, Hadon Alach Shemona Shirasim. Okay, Chazakim Ubruchim for completing yet another perek, and we have a little bit more to do regarding the next perek, which is going to be about tying knots. Okay, the Mishnah says, "Elu kesherim shecharabin alehen kesher hagammalin, the kesher hasappanim." Okay, the following are not allowed to make. These are permanent knots. Anything that's you make permanently that's meant to be long term, that is not allowed, and that would be knots of camel, of camels. As the gamal, a gamal is a camel. Gamal with a dagesh and the mem, that's a profession. That's a camel driver. And so too, sefina is a boat, a sapan is a sailor. And so sailing, a sailor's knots, those are very strong and permanent knots, those are not allowed. Just like now to make the knot, you also cannot undo the knot. Of course, this would be for a productive reason. If I'm undoing the knot because I need to remake it, move it, or some positive reason. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Meir, Omer, Kol Kesher Shuyachol Atiro B'Achad Miyadav and Hayabin Alav. He said, if I can undo it with one hand, then it's not considered a strong knot, right? If it's so loose that I could open it one-handed. Okay, what if you're Houdini and you can do it? I don't know. Doesn't say that. Okay. Else, it's not clear if Rabbi Meir is arguing or if he's really just explaining further. All right, so that's the Mishnah. My kesher gambalin, the kesher sapanim. What exactly is this knot that you're referring to? Illa makitra dikatri bizmama. If you're talking about a secondary knot, we have a picture here. So here is a knot on a camel in his nose. So we have one knot that goes directly through his nostril, and a second rope that attaches to the first one, which is useful because if you want to take it out, it's easier to take out the second one than the first one. So right now we think it's the second one here, the one that's attached to the loop that stays permanently in its nose. So if you say it's that one, and how about for the boat? If you say it's the one, it's the one that we affixed to the permanent knot that's on the boat, right? If they're both talking about the secondary knots, these are not permanent because when you do take them out, and as long as the leash of the camel is on, that's going to stay. Maybe it'll be on for a while, maybe a few days, but eventually you do unhook the leash, and when you unhook it, you're going to take off that second string that's attached to the first one that is in its nose. So that's not right because those are not permanent knots. Rather, it's talking about that first knot that's actually in his nose and the first one that's actually connected to the boat. Those are permanent. Okay, good. Rabbi Meir Omer Kol Kesher Ba'e Rabach Debo Yachoy Demar Aha. Aniba Rabbi Meir Mahu. It says, or Rabbi Meir said, if you can untie it one-handed, what's the law? And we have a question. How about a bow? Right, a bow like you tie your shoes. You can undo that one-handed, right? Does he mean that also? Let's see. If you say it's actually technically because you can undo it with one hand, so your shoelaces, any bow, you can untie with one hand. That's the point. Or is the real reason to be made because it's loose, and something that's loose is easy to untie. But a bow is tied tightly, and the only reason you can undo it with one hand is because it's made that way so that you can just pull half of it off. Is it about tightness or about actually being able to open it with one hand? Eko, we're not sure what exactly his reasoning was, and we could argue about that both ways. Okay, we have one more Mishnah, another section of that Mishnah left. Yesh, Mishnah says, Yesh lecha kesharin, ואין חייבים עליהן כקשר הגמלים וכקשר הספנים. Okay, the previous Mishnah said that permanent knots are no good. But there are other types of knots that do not chayav, not like the one of the camel and the one of the sailors, camel drivers and sailors. So which ones are allowed? Poshedet isha miftach haluka. A woman is allowed to tie the opening of her chute sebacha, and also the strings of a hat or a hairnet, v'shel pesakya, or of a girdle, a wide belt that goes around her waist, or suot min al v'sandal, and she can also tie straps of her shoe. A person, anyone, not just a woman, can tie the straps of her shoe or a sandal. Nodot yain v'shemen. They used to carry liquids, wine and oil, in these leather pouches, and they would have a tie to a string to tie it. Instead of lid covers on pots, sometimes they covered the pot with cloth or with leather and tied it on. So all those ties are allowed because they are temporary ties, right? You're just going to put it on while you're wearing that piece of clothing, or while the item is cooking, you're going to take it off, within the day. The B. Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, you're also allowed to tie up an entrance, a fence, so that the animal doesn't go out. That's only going to be temporary. Eventually, you're going to take the animal out. Okay, that's all the Mishnah. Now we ask a question about the Mishnah because the first line here, it seems, it is parallel to the first Mishnah. So the first Mishnah said these are permanent knots that are allowed, and there are the other knots that are not chayavin. But then it jumps from not chayavin to kosheret, to something that's mutar lechetechila. So we wonder about that. Hagufat kashya amat yesh kesherin she'en chayavin alen kekesher gamalin kekesher sapanim. In general, when you say something is not chayav, okay, maybe it's not chayav, but it's still asur, right? It's not going to violate a deoraita, but it's still a lower level, drabanan or shvut or something like that. And next item you say a woman can do this, which means that it's mutar lechetechila. She can put on that robe, she can tie it. So what's going on? Hachika amar yesh kesherin she'en chayvin alen kesher gammalin ukesher sapanin umaynihu kitra dekotri bizmama v'kitra dekotri beisterida. Oh, so there's the first level, which was previous Mishnah. That's the the first string that is tied directly onto the nose of the camel or of the ship, and then that's asur and chayav medoraita. And then the next level is the beginning of our Mishnah. It says there are some that are not chayav. That's the second string that you tie to the string that's attached to the nose, or the second string that you tie to the one that's attached to the boat. Those, although they're not chayav, still patura aval asur, because you leave them in very long time. They're kind of semi-permanent. Don't do it. It's not asur medoraita, but still not allowed. That's what the beginning of our Mishnah is talking about. And then after that, it says, the following are things that are allowed 100% totally. These are allowed to do in the first instance. She can tie the ties of her robe, and this is a garment that might have looked like in Roman times, where you have an opening to put on, and then you have a couple of ties kind of lace up the neck area. And that would be allowed. And so this is very good and important and practical, because a lot of times we're tying shoes and all kinds of things like that on Shabbat. And so all these things that are meant only temporarily are permitted. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Everybody.
Baruch.
Thank you.